Awesome. So Harv sort of starts off this book and he says, look, there's a lot of stuff here that's freaking gold, and basically all of it's gold, but there's a lot of stuff here that maybe doesn't apply, and that's kind of how you should take any kind of education, right? There's a part of it that's like super huge, super applicable, and that's key, and there's another part that maybe doesn't work as well for you. But what's really interesting is, like, some people, like, the part that they think is the least impactful for somebody else, that could be the most impactful part. And similarly, what someone thinks is the most impactful for somebody else, they think it's the least impactful. And so as you're sort of, going through this, make sure that you try to figure out, like, which parts you can apply, what mindsets you can immediately implement to create results, like today, this week, this weekend, whenever you're watching this, right? And so that's sort of the key going into this, which is really, really exciting. So Harv kind of starts off really, really well talking about where he came from, and how this book has sort of stemmed from his own experiences trying to figure out the game of money, figure out the mindset of money. And he started out like, he was listening to TVs, listening to tapes, listening to courses, and for most people, like, he just didn't get particularly many results. And so because that, he's looking, and he said, like, what are, like, the laws to become wealthy? What are the rules to become wealthy? Like, what can I do now? Like, what works to generate, windfall cash, right? Like, that was his big question. And for him, like, the goal, right, and the whole purpose is to sort of, like, demystify wealth, right? And as soon as you can demystify wealth, all of a sudden, it's not like this far away thing that you're working forever to get to. All of a sudden, it's something that's right in front of you that you can achieve almost immediately. And that's the big goal. That's the big motivation, right? And so that's sort of the key here, is we're gonna eradicate, right? Obviously, we need to get rid of self-defeating thoughts. And that's one of the biggest things we're gonna do originally, is we need to abolish this idea that so many people have that's holding them back from success. And most of that's mindset, most of that's a mental blockade. But after we break down the mental blockade, then we wanna build a new bridge that's gonna take you to the future. And so that's sort of the really big goal here, is not only get rid of stuff that's bad, but also create a really strong framework to lead you to wealth. That's what he calls it, the wealth files. And we're sort of gonna look at that. We're gonna look at how it sort of builds into your financial blueprint and how that's gonna kind of influence your mind. And we'll get a lot deeper into that as we go through this course. But it's really critical that you learn the practical step-by-step strategies for increasing your income and building wealth that we're gonna learn. Like, that's the goal, right? Like, if you can't take a simple step, like, I don't think there's anything that you can do. Like, you can't just, like, leap to the top of a staircase, right? When you ordered 9 to noon, like, I gave you the step, little steps. Like, there are chapters in a book, right? Because you have to go through the steps to get to the end result. And then you go, and then you get to the top of the mountain, right? You get to that goal that you desire. And to get here, you don't just step to the top of a staircase. You have to go little bit at a time. But it's really critical, especially with this education, that you value each step, right? It's not like you're skipping, you can sort of skip up a step when you walk up the stairs, right? You can step over a step and skip one. But with this education, with this training, it's really critical that you don't take the shortcut, that you don't skip these steps. Because if you do, let me give you an example, okay? A long time ago, I was playing like Little League Baseball, very long time ago. I remember when I was a kid, I was like really fat. I mean, it was super bad. It was bad. I mean, it was awful. But because of that, I had this mindset that, like, I need to prove myself to other people. I need to prove myself to my coach, to my teammates, to the other team, to the parents, whatever. And so I remember one time at practice, we're running on this giant field, okay? And it's like a baseball field, so you've got, like, first base, second base, third base, and home plate, and but it's like a circular kind of field, because it's more of a practice field. And so we're running around this field, and what happened is, like, the night before, it rained a bunch. So, like, this field, it had a lot of splotches of mud, like, all over the place. And they were sort of all around the fences, right? The fence that was around this field. But the big thing was, we weren't practice that day. And I'd say there's probably, like, I don't know, 15 kids there, right? And, coach says to everybody, he says, hey guys, let's run, 3 laps or something. Everyone's run the laps. This was, like I said, it was a practice field, right? So there were some pretty sharp corners. There were like 3 sharp corners at the edge of the field, right? And so we'll just pretend that these are corners, okay? And there was a bunch of mud in each of these corners. I mean, it was really, really bad. But the one thing coach said, it was like, you have to run the whole field, do the whole thing, go all the way, and don't skip the corners. Like, specifically, like, you can't skip the corners. And I remember every single person here would like get to this corner, and then they would go around it, and they would take like a shortcut, and they would cut off like, 15 seconds on it. And then they would come over here, and they would cut around it. They would take a shortcut, and they wouldn't go through the corner. And they'd come around here, and they would take a shortcut, and they wouldn't go through it. And I remember I was the only like idiot on the team who like ran. I was like running straight through the mud to get to the corner, then to go left, and then go straight through the mud to get to the corner, then to go left. They go straight through the mud. Like, I was a mess by the end of it. And my mom was like, "What the heck happened?" I'm like, "I ran through the corners. I did the whole thing." And then 3 laps or whatever. Thinking about that and understanding that, like, I was not a fast runner when I was growing up. I literally failed the PE mile. We had to run a mile every single year. We had to run a mile, and if you didn't run a mile under 15 minutes, which, by the way, for those of you who aren't into like cross country or running or whatever, like a 15-minute mile is like basically walking. But anyway, I couldn't run a 15-minute mile, so like I would try to run, but I just couldn't, and I would pant out. I would like, oh gosh, I was really unhealthy as a kid. But I would literally be that kid. There was like 4 kids who would fail the PE test. They'd be like the fattest guys in school. It was pretty bad. And what they did, which I think was crazy, but I mean, they would have the kids that failed the PE test, that failed the mile run, do it again 2 weeks later as if they're gonna be better, which it was not. You're not better. And that happened every single year for probably, I think, 4, 5, 6 years. Would always fail, always have to do it again, always fail again. And I think that was probably one of the biggest motivators for like actually changing my life, because physical fitness translates into material wealth. But the key here is we get done with this routine, even though I'm the slowest one on the team, and everyone's literally waiting for me at the end, because they had to let me on the team. It was like in middle school, elementary school, little league. I get back at the end, and coach stands up and he says, like, "Holy crap, awesome job for being the one person who actually did the task, who actually followed the instructions." And what he revealed was that this exercise was not, and for me, I couldn't believe this at the time because I literally never run that far in my life. But for me, he says this exercise was not about the running. This wasn't about the actual physical fitness, but instead it was about ability to follow directions, your ability to do what you're told. And it's harsh because you look at a lot of like the material world or the job market or whatever today, where you go down this path where it's like go to school, go to school, go to school, go to school, and then graduate school, and then go to school, and then go to school, and then go to school, and then go apply for jobs, and then work for the rest of your life. Like, it's very structured, it's very robotic, it's very do this and follow this path. And if others are forcing you to do that, it's harsh. And for me, like that's a really difficult sort of kind of motivation. There's no motivation, there's no purpose, there's no direction there if it's not led by the most important person in the world, which is you, right? And what he explained was like, you go through the hardships, you go through the difficulties, and you go 100%, and you go through the path on the things that you care about, the things that matter to you. For me, like, I wanted to prove myself, so I went all in. I was the only like guy who was dumb enough to run through all the mud, and coach realized that he explained that like that was the purpose. The purpose was to follow direction. And it's not like, take this test or take this test over and over and over again directions. It's directions for how you handle your life. It's directions for how you show up, because how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you're cutting corners anywhere, how do you think that's gonna translate to your portfolio? Like, what happens if you read, maybe you're analyzing a stock company and you read like a quarter of the annual report, and you say, stop, all right, we're done, it's over, I don't need to learn anymore by the company, it looks great. Or what if you go through like a quarter of the technical analysis, or 3/4 of the technical analysis, but you missed that one really critical key point? What if you're like thinking about investing in this ETF, you do all this research about this ETF, some of you guys might have gotten to this point in 9 to noon yet, some of you guys might not have gotten to this point in 9 to noon yet, where we talk about this concept of net asset value and exchange rates for ETF, which we'll get much deeper into later. But the core is, say the value of an ETF is, I don't know, $100, and the price is like, I don't know, 105, and you realize, and you do all the research you want, but you don't look at the net asset value. You pay it 105, and then 3 days later it's worth 100 because somebody traded an exchange block, which again is in the book, and we'll talk about it later. But like, you can't just go 90%. Like, if you want to have success, with anything that you're doing, if you want to obsess with your mind, if you want to obsess with your wealth, if you want to obsess with investing, if you want to obsess with business, cryptocurrencies, anything, any assets, you've got to go 100%. You cannot skip a stair. You cannot skip something just because, oh, I already know that. I don't care if you already know that. I remember so many like things that I've gone through, getting really deep into cryptocurrencies and blockchain tech, which is something I'm really passionate about and do a lot of work in outside of investing. I don't care if I know something because I learned it again and again and again to get better and better and better at it. And so it's really critical that we have that mindset covered, because going into this, there are a couple of lessons here that might seem really simple, and a lot of them are very simple. But what's in here is very powerful when you apply it, and it's like one of the most impactful shifts in your whole life can come just from doing what Harv and what Harv Eker says. And he has this really powerful quote here that I want to kind of finish this baseline out on, which I think is so critical. He says, throughout this book, he shares a few examples of how thousands of letters and emails he's received from students who've attended, seminars or whatever. And, he's talking about potential. He's talking about, how a lot of people come up short and they just have to keep working and pushing. And he says, a lot of people, they think that if they just get, the right business or get in the right house, like they'll make it. But they're wrong. And a lot of people he knows were wrong. And they were still broke. And they weren't at their peak potential. Why? It's because they didn't have the right mindset, right? And he talks about how this huge journey that he went through to search for what really creates success, like financially, personally, independently. What do you have to do to have the success? He talks like it's not luck, right? It's a formula, right? For Eker, he got some advice from some of his friends' parents who were very wealthy. And what's interesting is, they were in this house, in his parents' house, and as they're sitting in this room playing cards with Eker's, his grandpa and his dad and his kids and their friends, they come in and this guy looks at Eker, and at the time, Eker, he's living in his parents' basement. He had no money, he had no purpose, he had no fulfillment, he had no job. He called it the lower level suite, but it was the freaking basement. And then his grandpa, this wealthy guy, he says, I've seen you here for 3 years, and you look like a great guy. And I started out the same way. He says, I started out as a complete disaster. And what's interesting is a lot of people start here, right? They start at the bottom, start at rock bottom, start at the base. And this is honestly one of the best places you can start. Because what motivates a lot of people, like 2% of the population is ambitious, right? 98% of people are not ambitious, according to studies, right? What motivates people, a majority of people, is not ambition, but it's pain. Like, my bet is 98% of people that are going through this course, there's a 98% chance that you're not here because you want to achieve more, but you're here because you're in pain. You're here because you're scared that, like, my investments are gonna do crappy, or, my returns aren't gonna be great, or I'm not gonna be able to create, real savings in retirement, so I can have assets. And then there's that small portion of people that are very special people that are like, I'm gonna freaking crush it, just give you the coolest thing ever. And if that's you, that is awesome. But I fall in the 98%. Like, remember when I started out, it was because I was trapped working for other people, not having purpose, not having fulfillment, not having any real level of income, not having growth in any aspect of my life. Very difficult time in my life. And like the shift comes when you're in this place of despair and you see this potential, you see this limelight, for me, like this was me like seeing assets and seeing markets and seeing people making literally like hundreds of millions of dollars with stocks and financial markets. And I was like, I can get there. I can be someone who's at this peak at the top, right? And that's sort of the mindset that Harv has here. Is he was totally at the bottom. He was in a state of pain, and that was the best position for him to be in to actually go and start making a change in his life. It's just this wealthy guy, he says, look, excuse me, I'm not gonna lecture you, but look, I know you're not doing as well as you'd like. And that means that there is something you don't know, because in reality, all you can do is what you know. And if you don't know, what's in the second part of 90 Noon, which is like the top technical analysis, top setups, we'll go deeper and deeper into those. Like, if you don't understand that, it's very difficult to have really killer performance investments over and over again. Like, if you don't get technical analysis, it's essentially almost impossible to do any kind of active money management effectively. And so like you have to go the process to get the education, but you can only do what you know. So Harv, you know, Ecker, he says he never really considered that most rich people think in very similar ways, which makes sense. Like if you're in a group of people that are very closely knit together, and if you think about, you know, group of people by levels of wealth, like think about it, right? Like most poor people think the same way. They're worried about their next paycheck. They're worried about how they're gonna fit the bills, and they're worried about these little tiny problems that in the greater scale of things might not have as great of an impact. Then you look at rich people. What are rich people worried about? Rich people are worried about, you know, before they're gonna go up 100,000 today, or is it gonna go up 400,000? They're worried about, do I need to have a 10% return here or a 4% return here? Do I need to have this giant business problem solved that's gonna have a 6-figure difference in my career? Or do I need to maybe not do that at all and go on standby? Do I need to hire this person or not? Like, you wanna sort of increase your set point by increasing the way that you think. You want to think of the people that you want to be attracted to, that you want to be surrounded with. I remember when I was starting out, I sort of started thinking about this concept, and a lot of people I sort of hung out with, you know, they thought mentally like poor people, and they were constantly worried about like pinching pennies instead of finding dollars, right? And I started to shift sort of my friend group, my community, and you know, you want to surround yourself, or at least understand the mindset of the most successful people that you can find that are really crushing it, because you can adopt the exact same mindset that they're using to have success and have it sort of transmuted into your own self, right? This concept of the mastermind, but a little bit more applied to sort of your own mental state, right? If you're constantly surrounded with poverty every single day, like either that's gonna be a huge motivation to do more, which is awesome, or it's gonna be an inhibitor. It's gonna make you feel harsh, and that's why you see a lot of people that are really successful. They come from sort of maybe more successful family backgrounds because they're used to being surrounded by success. Now, here's the cool thing. You don't have to come from like the Bill Gates family to make a lot of money. All you have to do is understand that there's a big difference between the way rich people think and the way poor people think, and all you have to do is make a conscious decision to worry about the things that rich people worry about instead of the things that poor people worry about. All you have to do is focus on what actually matters and focus on the wealthy mindset. And even if you're starting off all the way at rock bottom, you can get the results of the top 1%, the top 0.01%. Like, it doesn't matter. It just comes down to what you do over and over and over again. And so you want to make sure, as we go through this, you think about ways that you can sort of stop doing things that poor people would do, and we'll sort of go through some things and start thinking of things that you can do that rich people would do. Like, the top 1% in America own, I think it's like over half the assets, maybe 40% of the assets, maybe 60, 70% of the assets. Obviously gonna fluctuate over time. But it's a huge chunk of all the assets, like paper assets, stocks, commodities, currencies, crypto, stuff like that. A majority of it is held by a very small minority of the population. And that's the rich part of the population. So my question for you is, if all the wealthy people that you know that exist are investing in assets more than anything else, what do you think you should do? And so here's, so that was sort of what this rich guy asked Ecker. And Ecker said, no, I never really thought about that. And so the rich guy, you know, he says, it's not an exact science, but for the most part, rich people think a certain way and poor people think a completely different way. And those two ways of thinking determine their actions and therefore determine their results. And he went on to say that if you thought the way rich people do and did what rich people do you believe that you could become rich too? That was his question. That was the like, can you do the same thing? And Ecker, he says, I think so. And so this old rich guy, you know, he says, then all you have to do is copy how rich people think. All you have to do is copy what they do. And you know, at the beginning he's a little bit skeptical about this, and he said, so what are you thinking right now? You know, rich guy, what are you thinking, right? You smart guy. And you know, he says, I'm thinking that rich people keep their commitments, and mine is to your dad, and then they go back to play cards. And the guy's waiting for me, and he's like, bye. That was important to him. That was the core for him. That was the basis for him. And that's sort of the core foundation here, is that you want to do what wealthy people do, and you want to follow the actions, those you can see that are succeeding, which you've obviously started doing by going through this course and by snagging 9 to noon and going through all this content, which is awesome. But now I really am excited to talk a little bit more about how Eckhart did this and sort of the overarching concepts and the mindsets that you can sort of take away from that to learn from, which is just like, phenomenal and super, super exciting. So with that said, I cannot wait to see you in the next module where we're gonna look at his life, which is awesome, very, very deep, and also look at sort of the path that he followed, which was based exclusively on following the wealthy. So thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next module. Bye.